Welcome back. In this video, I'm going to grade all 32 NHL teams as we're just about at that quarter mark through the season. I'm also going to tell you if I think they're going to make the playoffs or not, as well as if I think they are pretenders or contenders for the Stanley Cup. Now let's start with the Pacific Division. Number 8 now is the Vancouver Canucks. Now I initially had them finishing in 3rd in the Pacific, making the playoffs, but as we all know, it's a big tire fire right now. The coach and the GM could be fired at any minute. And my initial thoughts about them having a very thin defense has really been exposed. Their PK is awful, etc., etc. I have to grade them an F. I'm really sorry. I thought about giving them a D-. I just can't do it right now. Who knows, with a new coach, that new coaching smell, if that changes around the team mid-season, a la Berube with the St. Louis Blues a couple of years ago, I guess it's possible, but highly unlikely at this point. 7th in the Pacific Division, the Seattle Kraken. Just pretend there's an S there with a red I in it. Now, this is sort of where I thought they would be. Their goaltending's got to improve at some point, right? And the entire team is kind of like one really good third line, and it's just not enough. Now, I don't think anyone expected San Jose, Anaheim, even LA to be playing this well, so perhaps there's a bit of a market correction in that way, and Seattle bumps up a spot or two in the division, but I just don't see them making the playoffs. I'm going to give them a D at this moment. Number 6 in the Pacific is the Los Angeles Kings. Now, I initially didn't see them making the playoffs. I still don't. I think it's highly unlikely anyways. But they've also gone through a rash of injuries, right? Including their best defenseman, Andrew Doughty. They've lost Anastasio to COVID protocol. Walker's out for the season. Akil Thomas is injured. Byfield, they lost right off the hop at the beginning of the year. And Peterson has had a rough start to the season, hasn't he? But Quick has actually been quite the surprise. So there's that. Do I see them improving once they get some of these players back? Yes. Still not enough to make the playoffs, though. I'm going to give them a C-, but I think that can improve. Sitting at 5th in the Pacific Division is the San Jose Sharks, who I think have surprised a few people, including myself. I still don't see them making the playoffs, though, but their rookies have been playing well, as well as some of their veterans have really stepped up. James Reimer has really looked good in that he's had a resurgence, but I think eventually they'll revert to the bottom 3 of that division. At this point, I'll give them a B, but I think that's going to change. Sitting 4th in the Pacific is the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, I think we all saw them sitting higher in the division, but we got to give them a break, right? They went through a rash of injuries to their best players, the plethora of their defensemen. I'm going to grade them, let's say, a B at this point. They're still in a playoff position, and I think they'll finish even higher as the season goes on. Are they pretenders or contenders? I'm going to say contender, especially after they get Eichel. Now, if they get him before the playoffs, they'll have to massage that cap, maybe even lose a good player or two. But if they get him once the playoffs begin, a la Kucherov, this could be a really good team in the postseason. Number 3 in the Pacific is the Anaheim Ducks, mostly because of the surprising play of Ryan Getzlaf and Troy Terry. Not to mention the bounce-back season for John Gibson, who we knew was always good, just overwhelmed. And then there's some of the rookies who are coming along nicely, like Drysdale and Zegras, McTavish, who I think was sent back to the minors. But the veterans have been streaky, but have contributed, like Raquel, Silverberg, for instance, Adam Henrique. Do I see them making the playoffs? No, there'll be regression at some point, but I gotta give them an A right now. Number 2 in the Pacific Division is the Calgary Flames, who are doing better than I thought they would. Now, that's mostly because of bounce-back seasons from Johnny Gaudreau. Mangiapane has really broken out. Markstrom has having a bit of a bounce-back season as well. Vladar, his backup, has been amazing too. And this team has really become Sutter's club, hasn't it? Now, are they a playoff team? Definitely. Pretenders or contenders? Because of the way the coach has them playing, I'm going to say contenders. They remind me of the St. Louis Blues a couple years ago. And sitting first in the Pacific is the Edmonton Oilers. I got to give them an A+. Right off their bat. Their power play is a world beater. They really did a great job adding in the depth department with Hyman and Fugali. Just for starters, their defense I'm still very worried about, especially with Nurse out. Koskinen's got to run out of fuel eventually in net, right? When will Smith be back? Are they pretenders or contenders? I know this is controversial, but I'm going to say pretenders. I don't think this defense is good enough to go far in the playoffs. And the goaltending, to rest it all on a 40-year-old, maybe he gets them, past one round, but I don't think it's any further than that. All right, so let's get started on the Central Division now. Starting off in 8th place is the Arizona Coyotes, where we all thought they would be. They were a building club. There are some highlights here, though, like Shane Gostisbehere, after coming over from the Flyers. He's doing really well on that power play. Kyle Capobianco came back from injury. He's been looking good. Lawson Krause has been incrementally improving his game throughout the season. Jacob Chikrin had a bit of a rough start, but he's starting to get better as well, too. I'm going to give them a D-. They're definitely not a playoff team, and I don't see them moving out of the basement anywhere anytime soon. Sitting in 7th in the Central is the Chicago Blackhawks, who have lost their GM and their coach for all the reasons we know about. I mean, Kane and DeBrincat are doing well. Seth Jones is having a bit of a bounce-back season. Fleury is starting to gain ground again. Taves has been awful. I just don't see this team climbing much in the standings. I definitely don't see them making the playoffs. I think they're going to have to sell at the trade deadline and try and bounce back next year. I'm going to grade them a D. In 6th in the Central is the Dallas Stars, who are slowly clawing their way back into a playoff spot where I thought they would be. They got a lot of good things going for them here, like Heiskanen and Jason Robertson especially really stick out. Pavelski's having a bounce back, as is Jamie Benn. Rupi Heinz is continuing his good season from last. I know we've heard some rumors about John Klingberg, but I don't think he's going anywhere unless someone really overpays. And Ryan Suter has been a nice add to the depth defense as well. I'm going to give them a solid B. Are they pretenders or contenders? I'm going to say with some hesitancy, pretenders, because of their goaltending, but Ottinger's looked really good since he's been called up. Sitting in 5th in the Central is the Nashville Predators, who I think have been a little bit better than we all thought they would be, and a lot of that has to do with the resurgence of players like Ryan Johansson, but especially Matt Duchene, who's looked really good this year. Roman Josi, of course, continues to dominate. Players like Michael Granlund are having a good year as well. Tanner Jeannot, I know. Who? Yeah, well, he's scored a lot of timely goals. Their power play is one of the best in the league right now, right next to another unlikely team in Dallas. Their PK hasn't been terrific. Saros has done his part. He's looked really good. Do I think they're going to make the playoffs? No, but it's definitely possible. I'm going to grade them with a B. 4th in the Central is the Colorado Avalanche, who are there mostly because of injuries, also COVID, McKinnon's hurt at the moment, and goaltending hasn't been as good as we all thought it might be so far. We'll see if that improves as the season goes on. And their special teams hasn't looked so great either. Can Kadri keep up this pace? Can some of their rookies continue to do well, like Byram and Newhook, for instance? Playoff team, definitely. I think they'll finish in the top 2 in this division. I'll give them a C+. Pretender or contender? Contender? It's just that goaltending makes me second guess myself. In the number 3 spot in the Central is the Winnipeg Jets. Now, they went through a bit of a rough patch there, but I think they're going to be okay. They're right about where I thought they'd be. They're definitely a playoff team. They improved the depth of the defense in the offseason. Hellbuck had a bit of a rough start to the year as well. Dubois is really coming along, though. I know Wheeler has really hit a bit of a roadblock. People are questioning, has his age finally caught up to him? I'll give the Jets a B-. Are they a pretender or a contender? I'm going to say a contender. Yeah, I'm sure. Second in the Central is the St. Louis Blues. Their power plays looked terrific. Their penalty kill, not so much. Binnington has looked kind of human lately. Hopefully he improves. But they've been getting some terrific performances from players like Tarasenko, Buchnevich, and Jordan Kyrou. Do I think they make the playoffs? Definitely. Pretenders or contenders? I'm going to go with contenders if Binnington improves his play. I'll give the Blues an A-. And in first in the Central is the Minnesota Wild, who I'm maybe just a little bit surprised at how well they're doing. Now they're getting great play from all the players you expect from. Matt Dumba's having a bit of a bounce back. Goligoski was a nice add on that blue line as well. Zuccarello, although out at the time being, continues to defy his age. Ryan Hartman has been really hot lately. Marcus Foligno's been good, and I can go on and on. How do I grade this team? I'm going to give them an A right now. Pretenders or contenders? I'm going to say pretenders. I just don't think the goaltending is quite there, and maybe some of the depth with the forward group in the bottom six, but they could prove me wrong. And now, the Metro Division. Starting with the most awkward team, sitting in the 8th spot, is the New York Islanders. They're last in goals for, yet they're in the top 5 in goals against. Varlamov is having a really bad season so far, but Sorokin has been spectacular. The problem is, of course, a ton of their players are either on the IR, injured, or on COVID protocol, including almost all their defense, as well as their captain and their leading goal scorer. Now, I still think they need goal scoring help, which I eventually, maybe towards a trade deadline, they'll try to acquire. But believe it or not, I still think they're a playoff team. Not only that, but when it comes to contender-pretender, I think they're a contender. I just think this team needs to get healthy. Under Trotz, I think they're going to rebound. I think the goaltending with Varlamov is eventually going to get better there. How do I grade them? I've got to give them a D- at the moment. But really, it's not their fault, right? Sitting in 7th spot in the Metro is the New Jersey Devils, who, up until Jack Hughes got hurt, were trending in the right direction. Not to mention Miles Wood, who adds a nice piece of depth for them as well. This is an up-and-coming team. I think they're still rebuilding. Do I think they're going to make the playoffs? No, but I could be proven wrong there. How do I grade them so far? I'll give them a C, but I think they'll get even better. They need to work on that power play. Number 6 in the Metro is the Philadelphia Flyers. They got a lot of similar issues to the Islanders in terms of they're one of the worst in the league in goals for and on the power play, yet one of the best in goals against category with a middling kind of like PK. I don't know what to say about this team. They don't have the injuries or the COVID issues that the Islanders do. Ryan Ellis has been the one who's been out for quite some time. Could he be the sole reason why this team hasn't lived up to expectations? I know he's a good player, but it can't just be him, right? Maybe we start to point the finger at the coaching here. How do I grade them? I got to give him a D-. I mean, at least Hart has had a good rebound year, and Martin Jones has ironically looked the best he has in years. Do I see them making the playoffs? I seriously doubt it. 5th in the ever-changing Metro is the Columbus Blue Jackets. Who's not surprised by this? Yeah, you are. Don't lie. Nobody likes a liar. They're scoring. Their special teams looks pretty good as well. They're like 13th or higher in those categories that I just mentioned. Goals against has or is not as good as it has been in the years past for them, but their goaltending, especially from Merzlikins, has been quite good. It's Korpisalo who's been stumbling so far. I'm going to grade them a B+. Do I see them making the playoffs? I don't think so. Maybe? No. I'm going to go with a no, but that's not a hard no. 4th in the Metro is the Pittsburgh Penguins, kind of where everyone thought they might be. However, with the injuries that they've sustained so far, you'd think they might have slid lower in the lineup. Crosby's only been back recently, but he was in and out with COVID protocol. Malkin is still out, of course. And they're sort of middle of the pack when it comes to goals for and against. Their power play is awful, but their penalty kill is best in the league. And their best penalty kill, their goalie, has got a sparkling .936 save percentage in Tristan Jarry. However, Casey DeSmith, the backup, is not looking so good. So I got to chalk this all up to, or at least some of it, to coaching, right? Jeff Carter has stepped up, for instance. Evan Rodrigue, how often do you hear his name? He's been pretty good. It's been offense by community. Chris Letang, of course, has been wonderful, and he hasn't been injured. Ditto with, Jake Gensel. Rust is out at the moment as well. How do I grade this team? I'm going to give them a solid B. Do I think they'll make the playoffs? I gotta say no, but it's very hard to count them out. Maybe the Metro goes in with 5 teams, and the Atlantic only 3. That sort of depends all on the Boston Bruins. Third in the Metro is the New York Rangers, who have got a nice balance going right now. They're top third in goals for, goals against, power play. Their penalty kill needs a little bit of work, but Gallant is slowly sculpting this team into a playoff club. The only thing they're missing is some depth in the offense, really. Lafreniere and Kako have taken a little bit of a step, but they need more out of those guys. Will it come this year? I don't know. How do I grade them so far? I'll give them a solid B. Do they make the playoffs? I think definitely. Pretenders or contenders? Pretenders right now. Until they get more depth in their offense, I don't think they're going that far. Number 2 in the Metro, just dethroned by the Capitals at the shooting of this video, is the Carolina Hurricanes. Such a well-rounded team, coached by one of the best in Brind'Amour. Now, their goals for and power play is top third in the league. Their goals against and penalty kill is one of the best. Not to mention, they're getting some fantastic goaltending from Frederik Andersen, who's got a sparkling .932 save percentage. He had a great start for the season, too, as opposed to the last 5 with the Leafs, surprisingly. Not only that, but Ranta, whose numbers aren't great, is still getting them wins. How do I grade this team? I got to give them an A. They're definitely a playoff team. Pretenders, contenders, definitely contenders. How far Anderson takes them in the playoffs, though, is a little bit of a question mark. And one with a gun in the Metro is the Washington Capitals, who are in the top 5 in the league when it comes to goals for and goals against. Their penalty kill is pretty decent, too. Their power play is actually a little bit below 20%, not the greatest. They're getting some pretty good goaltending from Samsonov. The youngster there's got a .918 save percentage. He hasn't lost a game yet. Vanacek has been meh, but he's got more wins than losses. And they've got some key players who are injured, who are due to come back, like Backstrom and Oshie and Mantha. Their defense is actually better than everyone thought it would be. Rookie Martin Fevre is like a +6 right now. He even has 5 points. How do I grade this team? I'm going to give them an A+. I think it's the first one of this video. In terms of playoffs, definitely. Pretender or contender? I think I have to say contender, but I'm still somewhat concerned about the goaltending, especially with a goalie this young and somewhat unproven. And lastly, let's take apart the Atlantic Division, starting with in 8th spot, the Ottawa Senators. I don't think they're this bad. And a big reason for that, of course, is COVID running through their locker room. This is a really young team as well. They're slowly getting better. They finished really strong last year, and I think the same thing might happen this year as well. I still think they have a good coach. Their goaltending is a bit of a question mark. I feel so bad for Murray, although I was skeptical about that trade in the first place, and definitely about the money they gave him for the kind of player I thought he was then, now, however you want to put it. I really hope he rebounds somewhere, though. Of course, he went through waivers, was it today or yesterday? So we'll see what happens to him next. How do I grade this team? I'll give them a D. They had a half-decent start early on. Do I think they'll make the playoffs? Definitely not. 7th in the Atlantic is the Montreal Canadiens. They sort of lost their soul with Price and Weber gone, haven't they? And the rest of the team, be it youngster or veteran, has sort of regressed. They had a bit of a mismanagement with a lot of their younger players to begin with. Their goaltending hasn't been great either. Allen's got the best save percentage with a .902. And they're near the bottom of the statistical categories in the league when it comes to goals for, goals against, and both special teams. They just fired Bergevin today during the filming of this video. They haven't named a new GM, but they did bring on Jeff Gordon as the new executive vice president of hockey operations. So we'll see where that goes from there. How safe is Ducharme's job, or how long is it safe? Maybe the more applicable question. And at this point, I have to grade them an F. I definitely don't see them making the playoffs, but they could be big sellers at the trade deadline. 6th in the Atlantic is the Buffalo Sabres, who are regressing like we all thought they would because they had a hot start, in due part to Craig Anderson, their 40-something-year-old goaltender, who sported like a .921 save percentage, and then Tokarski and Dell took over. Tokarski has a .910, actually, not horrible. Dell is sporting an 862, so that's an issue. However, I think the coach is perfect for this team. He's doing really well with these kids who are taking a step forward, like Dallin and Cousins and Tage Thompson, just for starters. Some of the veterans are bouncing back, like Colin Miller, Kyle Pozo to a certain extent. Skinner might actually score 20 goals this season. I can go on. And they finally got that Eichel trade out of the way and have a player who's happy to come to Buffalo. Albeit he was traded there, but he's a hometown boy, and I'm saying that with no sarcasm whatsoever. This is great for them. There's light at the end of the tunnel. They are, in terms of goals for and power play, they're near the top third in the league. It's their penalty kill and goals against, which is sucky right now. I'm going to grade them a C- at this point, but of course, I don't see them getting into the playoffs. Fifth in the Atlantic, the Boston Bruins, who, mind you, have played 2 to 5 games less than any of the other teams above them in their division right now. So keep that in mind. The good players are playing as such, with the exception of maybe Taylor Hall, who's been a bit average. Charlie Coyle is punching above his weight class. He moved in the offseason from 3rd C to 2C because of the loss of Krejci. The only thing is the depth, maybe their defense here. And their goaltending has been quite average. It's got a .908 save percentage for both Swayman and Ullmark. Ullmark especially, who's being paid the big bucks, needs to be better. How do I grade this club? I'm going to give them a B. Do I see them making the playoffs? Yes. I'm not completely confident of that statement, but I think so. Because you never know with how good and volatile the Metro is. So there's that. Pretenders or contenders, though, definitely pretenders. I think they need an upgrade in net. Maybe Rask comes back. And down the middle, perhaps a trade with San Jose in the future. And even some depth defense could help them out as well. Fourth in the Atlantic, the Detroit Red Wings. Every year they seem to be taking a step forward. They're finally scoring some goals, mostly coming from not just Larkin and Bertuzzi, who are having really good years, especially Larkin, a bounce back after last season. But Raymond and Moritz Seider look fantastic out there. Those two youngsters, they're definitely going to be stars in the future. The goaltending, Nedeljkovic has done a great job. He's got a .918 save percentage right now. Greiss, not so much. .901. Do I see them making the playoffs? Definitely not. How do I grade them? I think I'm going to give them a B- for the way they've improved. Third in the Atlantic, the Tampa Bay Lightning. They lose Kucherov. They lose Point. They lose their entire third line. And they're still standing and punching. It's amazing. The good players have continued to take a step up, like Stamkos is having a really good season. Hedman, of course. Cirelli is looking really good. And that's just for starters. I can go on. Killorn, etc. Vasilevsky had a real rough start to the season, but he's sporting a .926 save percentage right now. He looks fantastic. Elliott, his backup, not so much. He's like .878, but he still has a winning record. He's 2-1. So how do I grade this team? I got to give them an A-, really, for the way they're doing without those two big players there. Pretenders or contenders? Definitely contenders. I even see them taking another serious run at the Cup this year. Second in the Atlantic, Tampa's bitter younger brother, the Florida Panthers. Don't forget they lost their coach not long ago, and they continue with their strong play, although they've hit a bit of a bump in the road recently. When it comes to their goals for and goals against per game, they're top 5 or higher in the league. It's their special teams that needs a bit of attention there. And their goaltending has had a huge bounce back from Bobrovsky with a .936 save percentage. Goaltenders are so weird. Just when you've written them off, they come back out of nowhere and surprise you. I mean, look at Frederik Andersen too. Look at Martin Jones especially. And then there's like Matt Murray on the other end of the spectrum who hasn't been able to do it yet. Knock on wood, he gets there. Spencer Knight is a .901 save percentage at the moment, but he's still young. I'm sure he'll grow with the club. And they're doing all this without Barkov, who's been injured for a little while now. Duclair's also out, amongst others. So how do I grade this team? I got to give them an A-, especially with, changing their coach in the beginning of the season out of the blue like that. Are they pretenders or contenders? I definitely think they're contenders. Bobrovsky's back, right? Right? And number 1 in the Atlantic, last in this video, the Toronto Maple Brothers, my hometown team. Now, they look really good. They stumbled at the beginning of the season there, but their special teams is firing on all cylinders right now. Both the penalty kill, and the power play. The goals against is like top 3 in the league at the moment. Goals for is around 18th, but that's because the team shooting percentage is around 5 or 6%. That should go up to at least 9. Then how dangerous will they be? Their goaltending. Jack Campbell has a .943 save percentage. I think that's tops in the league. And that's with 17 starts. He's been known to have some injury issues in the past, like last year, but he did play well last season, and so far so good, right? The insurance and Peter Mrazek, he's been hurt twice already. He's barely not even played 2 games. We'll see what happens when he returns. But the rookie, Joseph Woll, has looked really good, albeit 3 games in, with 1 shutout and a .939 save percentage. Have I said goalies are weird already? He has horrible numbers in the AHL, and this is what we're looking at so far. Anyways, now, they're actually winning very close games on top of that, playoff-type games. I still think they need some upgrades. On left wing, I'd like to see a goal scorer like a JT Miller in an ideal situation, but more so, I think they need some depth on that defense. I like to see Hull, who is the second pairing right shot defenseman, pushed down to the third pairing, and I'd like to see a trade for like a Josh Manson from the Anaheim Ducks, who I know is going to be UFA at the end of the season anyways, to slot in there along Muzzin to form a nice shutdown pairing. Otherwise, I think they're good. How do I grade them? I'm going to give them an A. Contender or pretender. I'm really doing my best not to be biased, but I think contender. I really do. I think they're playing playoff-style hockey right now. And I know nothing during the regular season matters for this team. It's all about the playoffs. But I think they're preparing themselves. I'm looking forward to it. I really am. After the huge disappointment last season, look at my live reaction video. It's good, but bad. Before I go, I just wanted to say that over 80% of the people who watch my videos now are not subscribers. If that happens to be you, please jump in. The water's great. I'd love to have you. For those who have stuck with me through the years, please consider supporting me and the channel through my crowdfunding site called Buy Me a Coffee. You can find a link in the description box or on my YouTube page. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, which will alert you when my next video comes out. Be kind to each other out there in this gonzo world we're living in these days, and I'll see you soon.